it's Trey. When I was a kid, Labor Day was the last day of summer, the last day of camp and running around barefoot and doing cannonballs like these kids at the Charleston Tennis Club pool in Charleston, West Virginia. Back in the day, I was head lifeguard at the club when I was home from college. Labor Day was the last day of freedom before school started. Today, that's not true anymore. In Charleston, school's been in session since mid-August. But Labor Day still acts like the far turn of a racetrack. We're into fall and the home stretch of another calendar year. The holidays and a contentious presidential election are not far away. It's time to focus and prepare. But first, what did you do on your summer vacation? From West Virginia Public Broadcasting and PRX, this is Us and Them, the show that tells stories about the things that divide us. I'm Trey Kay. And yes, there are plenty of issues right now that put Americans on opposite sides of what can sometimes feel like a very deep chasm. But there are also many examples of people who do things to forge new connections between others and strengthen their communities. One of them is Festival Charleston, a nonprofit group that brings together artists and arts groups for hundreds of events each year. During my summer vacation, I took part in Festival's monthly speaker series called 3 Things. It was at a community center in downtown Charleston. It's a live storytelling event that has an engaging and fun format. Jeff Shirley is the host and producer of 3 Things. He's also a producer for NPR's Mountain Stage and a colleague of mine at West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
I'll give you the quick rundown of the show. It's very simple. I get 3 people to come up and tell us about their lives with the 3 themes of first, favorite, and future. What we hope to get from that is where they come from, what they love about what they do, and where they would like to take it from here. I don't give them hardly any instruction after that, and that usually guarantees that we will get 3 unique approaches to the task from all of our guests. So we'll get right to it here with our very first guest for the show. I've known her for a long time, and my day job, as some of you know, I work at Mountain Stage, and I remember when, it's years ago, and Bela Fleck and his wife Abigail Washburn were coming on the show, and they said, hey, we need a nonprofit charity they would give a percentage of their merch stuff to for the sales for that show. And they were very specific. They needed a nonprofit that was focused on children and, health needs. So I said, I know exactly that person. So I always felt that was a nice tie into my day job as well. So please welcome the Executive Director of Children's Therapy Clinic to tell us about her first, favorite, and future, Valicia Leary.
Thank you, Jeff. I know when I saw him at Art Walk last month, and I heard him go, Valicia. I said, yeah.
I get that a lot.
And he said, would you do 3 things? And I said, let me think about it. And then he texted me Monday. He said, what do you think? I said, I think I'm nervous, but I'll do it. So thank you for having me. Thank you all for coming out this evening. As you probably may have read in the program, I went to Marshall University and I majored in education. I planned to be an elementary reading teacher, and I did just that for about 5 years before my husband and I started our family. We had our first daughter, Elizabeth, who is over there, in the fall of 2000. And Elizabeth was born about 7 weeks early. We had been told because she was premature that she may be delayed. And about a year old, she still was delayed, and we asked some more questions. And we were referred to a neurologist, and she was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. So we started her in early intervention, and she received physical, speech, and occupational therapy. We wanted a little bit more, though. So we took her to another place for extra physical therapy. And we were upset and disappointed to know our insurance wouldn't pay for it. They said because she had cerebral palsy They would not help her learn to walk or learn the things she needed. But if she had hurt herself, broken her leg, they would rehab her. So we were introduced to Children's Therapy Clinic. And I was told about this wonderful place where Elizabeth could go for therapy and we wouldn't have to pay a dime. So she started physical therapy, going to the clinic, and I thought it was just a fabulous place. Like, where else could we get what she needed and it wouldn't be a cost to us? So I started volunteering, asked how I could help, was invited to become a board member that fall. I'd never done anything like this. I was a school teacher. I was a mom, but I wanted to help other families like ours receive these services that were so important to children. So I was a board member, as I said, got more involved, became the secretary, became the president. In 2005, that spring, the director announced that her husband was offered a job in Cincinnati and she was moving. She said I should take the job. Again, no training as an executive, a nonprofit. I had never written a grant. I had not done any of this, but I knew the importance of our services and I knew how to help the children. And so I talked with my husband and we decided I should go for it. So in June of 2005, I became the director, and it has been the most rewarding thing I think I've ever done, but can also be the most challenging. We've had some great times. We've had some challenging times. COVID, as you have children come into the office for therapies, trying to teach them how to socially distance and all of that. It was difficult, but it was great because we got to see them. Every day I know I'm so fortunate to have this job and to be doing what I'm doing, which brings me to my favorite. My favorite part of my job is the children, the families, my coworkers, everyone who does the hard work. The therapists teach the children what they need to do, and I get to see the children grow. We have children that come in and they can't communicate. They might not be able to walk. They might need help interacting with other children. They might come to our social skills groups. So it's so much fun to see that growth. My favorite success story, I would have to say, would be my daughter. Elizabeth received therapy for several years. She was able to go to college, navigate campus, and graduate with her degree. And I know it's because of the things they taught her at the clinic. And then one mom shared her son was about 6 years old. He has autism, and she was shopping one day. And her husband called her, said, "Jacob wants to say something to you." He was pretty old by the time he said "mommy," so she didn't think he would say a whole lot. But there in the middle of Walmart on the phone, he said, "Mommy, I love you." And she said, "What?" "Mommy, I love you." And she said, "Please say it again." "Mommy, I love you." And he had been receiving speech therapy at the clinic, and he was able to learn and to talk and share those, and just little things that these children can do after they receive the services. And even though some days are very hard and trying, I know that we're making a difference. You know, these families, otherwise they couldn't receive the services they have if we didn't exist. As far as my future with the clinic, one of my goals has always been to get our own building, have our own place, but I know I always want to leave things better than I found them. So I definitely want to leave the clinic whenever that is, not anytime soon. I know I have some board members here, so rest assured. You know, I want to be able to continue to grow, to provide more services to the children, to help more families like ours. I want one day for someone else to get letters like I have received over the years. A few years ago, I got a letter from a father, and he said, "You'll be getting a donation from my retirement account." He said, "Several years ago, my daughter, who is about my age, my daughter received physical therapy at the clinic, and because of those services, I know she was able to be independent, and she was able to do a lot of these things because of that service." And I meet people all the time out in public who have said, "Children's Therapy Clinic helped my child or helped me." And so I just want to make sure I can leave that to the community.
Thank you, Valicia. See, for you first-timers, this show is great. But coming up next, we have from the West Virginia Symphony Orchestra, Maurice Cohn. I got to meet him when my day job at Mountain Stage, we collabed with them with Judy Collins and to see how much she really just loved him. So it was like a beautiful thing. I don't know if you ever see a lady like Judy Collins. You know, I hold her way up here in esteem of musicians, and just watch her just be enamored with somebody. It was really a nice thing. So that was my introduction to Maurice, and I knew that day that I wanted him to be on. And please welcome, to tell us about his first favorite and future, Maurice Cohn.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jeff. Before I speak a little bit about me, I just wanted to say how happy I am to be here, both speaking, but also to just be in a community that has a series like this. To live in a place with a group of people who are curious and open and want to know what the new guy down the street does and are interested in what their neighbors are doing. And it's a really wonderful thing to be part of that. And I came here a year ago for the job at the West Virginia Symphony, and it's been a wonderful thing to get to feel more and more integrated into a community like this one. I came to music as a very young kid. I grew up in Galesburg, Illinois, which is a small town on the sort of Iowa side of Illinois, 8 or 9 hours drive from here. And I had a group of friends after school. We'd all pile into somebody's house, and we had a babysitter. In this group of kids, one of them was named Peter Ortner, and he would have been maybe like 8 years old, and I would have been 4. And when you're 4 and you have a friend who's 8, I mean, they're cool, right? Like they're really, anything that Peter does, I want to do. And one of the things that Peter got to do was he got to go to Monmouth, Illinois, which is a town maybe 25 minutes away, 30 minutes away, because he took cello lessons, and there was a cello teacher in Monmouth. And so a lot of times we'd have to sort of schlep in the car to take Peter to his cello lesson, which was very exciting because it was a kind of a field trip, but also very boring because then you had to sit and wait for it to be over before you could come back. And so I came up with the idea of how to make this less boring, which is to join Peter and also learn how to play the cello. So I went to my parents and said, I've decided to learn how to play the cello. And they said, you're 4 years old, don't be ridiculous. And I said, okay, I'll ask you tomorrow. And I don't know if it was their sort of eventual decision that music is good in a young person's life, or if they were just really annoyed that I kept asking, but eventually they said yes, and I got cello lessons. And then began my relationship with music, which started out, I'm sure for many people in this room, as you've landed in the profession that you've landed in, started out accidentally. Started out because I was friends with someone who was friends with Peter, who played the cello. Peter no longer plays the cello, but we're still friends. I got more serious as I got older about the cello, and I went to a conservatory, Oberlin Conservatory, also not that far from here. And while I was at Oberlin, I, like everybody else, was looking for a student job and found a youth orchestra called the Northern Ohio Youth Orchestras. What they advertised the position as kind of an assistant conductor position, which I was definitely not qualified for, having never conducted anything. But what they really needed was a cellist or a bass player to come on the weekends and help out, and I fit the bill. So I got the job, but it also involved some conducting. And so I began this journey of conducting and completely fell in love with the art of it and the challenge of it and the amazing kind of jigsaw puzzle that is an orchestra. And so you're in a rehearsal and you're going along, you're conducting in the rehearsal, and you notice that the violins are playing too quickly, right? They're rushing. It happens sometimes. One thing that you might say, totally normal, is you stop the orchestra, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, violins, a little bit too fast. Could you play that a little bit slower? That's not wrong, but it's also not right, because your job as the conductor is to realize that the reason in this hypothetical situation that the violins are rushing is not because they're just playing too fast, but it's because they can't hear the bassoons. The bassoons are back there in this situation. If the violins are here, usually the bassoons are over there. The bassoons are back there playing some sort of very easy to follow groove, and if only the violins could hear the bassoons, then they would play perfectly and there'd be no problem. And so your job as the conductor is to know this and to stop the orchestra and say, excuse me, in the trombones, could we play a little softer? Because if the trombones play softer, then the violins can hear the bassoons, problem solved, right? And that kind of musical Tetris, that kind of three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle is endlessly fascinating and something that I, sort of experienced for the first time, albeit in a very limited context with my, little middle school group. But it's just a sliding scale of complexity. The questions are the same. Are you listening to your colleagues? Are you making a beautiful sound? Are you listening to yourself? Are you, do you have the self-awareness? All of those things are exactly the same at any age of music making. And so I became very interested in conducting and very sort of obsessed with trying to figure out how this works. And this culminated in something that is probably my favorite performance I've ever given, which is that in my senior year of my cello degree, there was an orchestra at Oberlin that was designed for non-music majors, right? So Oberlin Conservatory is connected to Oberlin College, which is a wonderful liberal arts college full of chemistry majors and history majors and political science majors, et cetera. And they have an orchestra that's for them. And the professor who was conducting that orchestra was on sabbatical, was on leave that year, and they couldn't find a replacement. And so they asked me to take over. It was a little odd because it was my friends, my classmates that I was doing this with, but it was very exciting. And it ended up, through that experience, my cello teacher at the time came and played with us as a guest soloist. Being part of that and being able to conduct that orchestra side by side with my cello teacher was still a favorite musical moment of my life, and definitely solidified my desire to pivot after undergraduate degree and try to pursue conducting professionally after that. So I did. So did some graduate work, and then was hired by the Dallas Symphony to be the assistant for several years, and worked around various other orchestras. Then the opening came up for the music director job here in West Virginia, and I was thrilled and honored to be offered the position. The first year here has included so many highlights. Mountain Stage, which was a true joy to do, just a real like a forever memory to be able to do that concert with you and everybody was amazing. And then as we think about going forward, the future of the symphony here, I think is very exciting. Our opening night is September 14th. We're opening the season with Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, so that's otherwise known as the most important 4 notes in the history of music, right? Bum, 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 right? You've definitely heard it. And the season is full of so many things. We're doing an opera, not a stage opera, but a concert opera, bringing opera back to the season for the first time in many years, well over a decade. And also, we take really seriously the idea that we're the West Virginia Symphony, and we want to be the symphony for as many parts of the state as we can, and play in as many parts of the state as we can, and collaborate with institutions throughout the state. So to that end, this season you'll see a wonderful program that includes music from Stravinsky's Firebird Ballet, but instead of with dancers, we're going to present it with live puppetry from the West Virginia University Puppetry Department, just on stage to act out, show you the story of this piece by Stravinsky. So we want to make sure that any time that there's a young kid whose friend ropes them into a music lesson that maybe the parents were a little surprised about, they have a warm and friendly place to come at the West Virginia Symphony. So I'm really thrilled to be part of it, and really happy to have the chance to speak to you tonight. Thanks so much.
Coming up after a break, I joined the Three Things event from Festival Charleston to share my first, favorite, and future. You're listening to Us and Them. This program is supported in part by the West Virginia Humanities Council and the CRC Foundation.
In difficult times, music gives us peace, brings us together, and helps heal us. It calms our nerves and brightens our days. That's why we're bringing you classic episodes of Mountain Stage on air and in our podcast. This is Larry Gross, host of Mountain Stage. Find something that's familiar or brand new and feel the power of live music on our website, mountainstage.org.
Hey, Trey here. And this is Us and Them from PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting. During the summer, I was honored to take part in Festival Charleston's live speaker series, Three Things, which asks people in the community to talk about their careers using 3 prompts: their first, their favorite, and their future. We've already heard Valicia Leary talk about how she went from school teacher to executive director of the Children's Therapy Clinic. Maurice Cohn, the musical director of the West Virginia Symphony Orchestra, recalled how boredom launched his love of music. And then it was my turn at the mic. Here's Three Things producer and host Jeff Shirley.
Last tonight is a man that I work with. He's the host and creator of the Us and Them podcast, an NPR distributed program. Not only did I really want him on because, his name's Trey, so he's already on brand for this show, which is great. But it was funny, when I announced that he was on, I was getting messages and texts from a lot of people, like my friends from back home in Pennsylvania and my friend from San Diego, and they say, "Oh, we listen to him all the time. We love the Us and Them pod." And it was really, I don't want to sound surprised, but I was a little surprised at some of these people that were reaching out that I hadn't heard from. My friend Judd, I hadn't heard from him in probably 5 years, and he reached out. He said, "I see you have Trey Kay on your show." Never one in 9 years has never commented once about anything that I've done. But so Trey, so the infamous and famous, to tell us a little bit about his first, favorite, and future. I have no idea what he's going to talk about today. He does so many things. Please welcome Trey Kay.
First, that makes me feel great that some people told you that they knew who I am. It feels so good to hear responses from you folks, and that you apparently have people in California. We have a lot of downloads in California. So, God, that feels good. So just give me a minute here to soak that in. As the great speakers before me, I just want to reflect how honored I am to be asked and to be a part of the festival. And yes, I am new to Three Things. And I like what Maurice said about what it says about a community who wants to come together and kind of know and better understand their neighbors. I just thought that was very well said. I want to talk about something in my life that has just brought me great joy. And I feel it is so appropriate that I am following Maurice, who spoke so much about his life with music and how it has been an important part of his life, and just really how it turned his lights on. That's what I got from your story. So I have a prop. So this Beat to Hell guitar was the first guitar that was given to me. I don't think it's playable anymore because I took it on a college trip to our cabin in Virginia, and my friend Brian Griffin sat on it. The neck is coming away from the body. You can see it's all dusty. My brother Craig is here. I thought it was given to me, but both of us took guitar lessons on this down at Gorby's in South Charleston. After about a year of me taking lessons and hating practicing, I think his name was Mr. Akery, and Mr. Akery told my mom, "You need to save your money." Because this guy is never ever going to play the guitar. But the other great thing that I had in my childhood was my father had a friend whose name was Donald Gene Mullins, but everybody called him Moon. And to my brother and I, we called him Uncle Moon. And Uncle Moon had a beautiful Gibson guitar, and he, to me and my brother, we thought he was awesome. And he would come to our house, and he wouldn't bring his guitar in. He would come in and just talk well, and then we would beg him to go out to the car and get his guitar and come in and play it. At some point, I think Mom took me back to another music store. I think it was Guthrie and Bean, which was right on Dickinson, right? I don't know. It's right there on Courier Street. And that teacher showed me a few chords. And so after I learned those chords, I was able to, when Uncle Moon would come over to the house, I could strum along with him. And that was a huge thrill. Just fast forwarding, I learned to play the guitar. I could turn a record on and figure out the chords. And I've continued to play the guitar. I've played in bands and all that stuff throughout the years. So that's my first. This is my first, which leads a bit to my favorite. Playing the guitar, and also when I grew up here in Charleston, I got very involved in theater. I studied theater at Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, and eventually that led me to New York City to pursue playing music and also acting in theater. And I had about a decade and a half of doing that in New York City. And then I just got this idea that I wanted to write stories for the radio. And there was this new arts and culture show called Studio 360. I don't know if anybody ever heard it. It used to be on NPR. It ended just right before the pandemic. But that was the show where I got my start as a radio journalist. And as a matter of fact, I did that show for about 3 years before I even called myself a journalist. I was just a guy who liked to tell stories about people in the arts. I was able to call up my heroes and get interviews with them. And so I interviewed Tom Waits and Willie Nelson and Meredith Monk and William Styron and Spalding Gray and Norman Mailer. But my favorite interview was this man who, well, let me back up a minute. When I was playing the guitar in our living room, Uncle Moon used to sing a bunch of songs that my father and all of the men who were there and all the women who were there just simply loved. And we thought these were songs by Tom T. Hall. Later in life, we realized that the songs that we really loved were not written by Tom T. Hall. They were written by this songwriter known as Billy Joe Shaver. He's written songs that Elvis has recorded, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson, etc. My father at that time was a drinker, and he used to love to have just like a big tumbler full of whiskey and Coke. And when Uncle Moon would sing one of these, what we thought were Tom T. Hall songs, but they were really Billy Joe Shaver songs, the men in the room where they were kind of half in the bag, they would hear those songs and there would be this faraway look in their eyes. And they would sing along with Moon as reverently as you would sing a church hymn. Fast forward, the year is 2005. My father passed away, and I'm still kind of going through the grieving period. And I get a press release that comes to me that says, Billy Joe Shaver has a new album out. And I thought, I'm going to interview this guy. And I met him at the show, and it was me and a cousin of mine and Billy Joe as soon as he finished up. And we walked several blocks to this Holiday Inn hotel. And we went up to his hotel room with him. And if you ever knew Billy Joe, he always wore kind of denim shirt and cowboy hat and these not stylish cowboy boots, but cowboy work boots. And so he sat down in a chair in his room and he ordered a pizza. And then he just pulled off those boots and he kind of sat his white socks kind of up on the table there, and he just leaned back in his chair and he just started telling me stories. And as he started telling me stories, I told him the story about how my father and my Uncle Moon used to sing these songs, and I said they sing them as reverently as they would sing a church hymn. And I said, what do you think of that? He said, there's a lot of good cowboy logic in them songs. He, at the time, I was grieving the death of my father at the time. He was still grieving the death of his son, who had an overdose of heroin. Somehow, I was looking for some type of thread to the story that I was going to do about him. And as he was talking, he started telling me about his relationship with God and that how God had changed his life. And he used all the terms that I had heard here growing up in West Virginia that had seemed fundamentalist and evangelical, and that, quite frankly, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, but they turned me off a bit. But somehow hearing Billy Joe talk this way, it seemed like he was speaking with a kind of a spiritual connection that seemed to transcend all of those terms. I guess I was trying to say, well, okay, have you turned from all this honky-tonk life that you seem to celebrate so much in your songs, and now you're embracing God. And I also said, and do you seem to be somewhat concerned that maybe all of this honky-tonk life that you lived might have also contributed to the lifestyle that your son lived, and that maybe that led to his death? And he says, no, man. He said, God loves you wherever you are. God loves you whether you're using the church or whether you're using the honky-tonk. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And it made my story, but what's more, it somehow helped me touch the sadness that I was feeling about the loss of my father, and feeling, that God loved him wherever he was too. And I'll just close with the future part. Us and them, our slogan is that we tell the stories about the things that divide Americans. There's so many things. I don't have to tell you guys that we have things that divide us. And Us and Them is a show that is trying to reach across the divide and find the humanity in the people that we may disagree with. I think it's the issue of our times. And I want to, in the future, continue doing the work that can help heal those wounds. The selfish thing is somehow I wish that my guitar playing could be a part of that. And at the very least, I feel that the arts, whether it's music like Billy Joe Shaver or arts that would be at the West Virginia Symphony Orchestra, can bring us together and connect. The one thing, and I'm actually looking for funding for this, is that I'm interested in serious artists who are seriously engaging in being thoughtful about how to heal these divisions. And the funding that I'm looking for is to see if there's a way that Us and Them and Mountain Stage can figure out a way to work with some of these players, these musicians who have that in mind. And that's what I'm thinking about for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trey Kay. That was a great one. I do want to say I was lucky enough to work one Mountain Stage with Billy Joe Shaver, if I'm not mistaken. We sold so many of his bumper sticker that says, "If you don't love Jesus, you can go to hell." He also had one that said, "You're only as young as the woman you feel," was his other. We did not sell as many of those. I don't think that was as universal. But thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time.
I've spent a lifetime making up my mind to be more than the measures of what I thought others could see. Good luck and fast bucks are too few and too far between. There's Cadillac buyers and old five and dimers like me.
You've been listening to Us and Them. Our team for this show was me, Trey Kay, Amy Eddings, and Kate Smith. Special thanks to Jeff Shirley and Festival Charleston. Michael Lipton, Tristam Lozow, and Ahmed Solomon wrote and performed the Us and Them show music. This song is Old Five and Dimers, a Billy Joe Shaver song that my dad and my Uncle Moon and his buddies would sing as reverently as a church hymn. My buddy, Bobby Lee Messer, helped me record it. Mark Lerner designed our logo. The marvelous people at PRX and West Virginia Public Broadcasting make Us and Them possible. So do grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the West Virginia Humanities Council, and the CRC Foundation. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this episode and what you did for your summer vacation. Connect with us on Facebook or on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Us Them Podcast. Us and Them was originally developed with assistance from the mentorship program at AIR, the Association of Independents in Radio. We'll see you next time on Us and Them.
It's taken me so long, now that I know I believe. All that I do or say is all I ever will be. Too much ain't enough for old five-and-dimers like me. Too far and too high and too deep ain't too much to see. An old five-and-dimer is all I intended to be.
Support for this podcast comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
From PRX.